Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyaham. Dear Divine Selves, as you know, I am doing a series of discourses which are essentially Swami Vivekananda's Practical Vedanta lectures compiled in the book titled Lectures from Colombo to Almora. When Swamiji returned back to India from the West in 1897, he began to give his vision, his global experience, and in the light of all this experience, what does Vedanta and the eternal message of Upanishads mean for day-to-day life of an average Indian, a common Hindu, an ordinary Sanatan Dharmi? Vedanta or any philosophy, if it remains confined to the books, monasteries, ashrams, it has very little value. But only those philosophies, those systems of knowledge which has a very deep and wide bearing on the life individual, life of the community, life social, economic, cultural, religious, in day to day has deep impact. And that is what Swami Vivekananda is trying to suggest, that when India became Vishwaguru spiritually, but a mighty military power and a great empire and the most prosperous nation. Even till 18th century, India's contribution to global GDP and trade was about 27 to 8%. Today it's less than 1%. The so-called growth, economic growth and development we are having. So all this splendor and glory of India beginning from the ancient times, from the Vedic era, whether life, social life, cultural life, economic, political, all has a deep bearing and impact of the eternal values of Upanishad, the mind-making, the sutras of victory and victorious life, the essence and the mantras of a blissful, harmonious, successful and meaningful life was imbibed in day-to-day life of vast majority of Indians, which made India a prosperous, thriving, intellectually, culturally, spiritually, at the pinnacle of its progress. So that is what during this series of lectures I thought it proper that these lectures should reach out to the vast masses of India. They are as relevant when they were delivered at the end of the 19th century, in the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century. They are more relevant. So please listen to the Practical Vedanta lectures of Swami Vivekananda, and this lecture is the lecture that was given at Madurai. Swamiji says, wherever there is a thing really needed in one part of the world, the complement will find its way there and supply it with new life. This is true in the physical world as well as in spiritual. If there is a want of spirituality in one part of the world, and at the same time that spirituality exists elsewhere, whether we consciously struggle for it or not, that spirituality will find its way to the part where it is needed and balance the inequality. In the history of human race, not once or twice, but again and again, it has been the destiny of India in the past to supply spirituality to the world. India was the hub of, center of, and the biggest supplier of spirituality, the eternal, immortal treasure trove of spirituality was the lifeline and life force of India in the ancient times. We find that whenever either by mighty conquest or by commercial supremacy, different parts of the world have been kneaded into one whole race and requests have been made from one corner to the other. Each nation, as it were, poured forth its own quota, either political, social, or spiritual. India's contribution to the sum total of human knowledge has been spirituality and philosophy. These she contributed even long before the rising of the Persian Empire. The second time was during the Persian Empire, for the third time during the ascendancy of the Greeks, and now for the fourth time during ascendancy of the English. She is going to fulfill the same destiny once more. As Western ideas of organization and external civilization are penetrating and pouring into our country, whether we will have them or not, so Indian spirituality and philosophy are deluging the lands of the West. None can resist it, and no more can we resist some sort of material civilization from the West. A little of it perhaps is good for us, and a little spiritualization is good for the West. Thus the balance will be preserved. It is not that we ought to learn everything from the West or that they have to learn everything from us, but each will have to supply and hand down to future generations what it has for the future accomplishment of that dream of ages, the harmony of nations, an ideal world. Whether that ideal world will ever come, I don't know. Whether that social perfection will ever be reached, I have my own doubts. But whether it comes or not, each one of us will have to work for the idea as if it will come tomorrow and as if it only depends on his work and his alone. Each one of us will have to believe that everyone else in the world has done his work, and the only work remaining to be done to make the world perfect has to be done by himself. This is a responsibility we have to take upon ourselves. In the meanwhile, in India, there is a tremendous revival of religion. There is danger ahead as well as glory, for revival sometimes breeds fanaticism, sometimes goes to the extreme, so that often it is not even in the power of those who start the revival to control it when it has gone beyond a certain length. It is better, therefore, to be forewarned. We have to find our way between the sila of old superstitious orthodoxy and cherubis of materialism, of Europeanism, of soullessness, of the so-called reform which has penetrated to the foundation of Western progress. These two have to be taken care of. In the first place, we cannot become Westerns. Therefore, imitating the Westerns is useless. This is the most important line that we Indians, each one of us, must remember forever. Imitating the Western world is useless forever. Suppose you can imitate the Westerns, that moment you will die. If India begins to imitate West, India would die. In some senses, in a very significant sense, it is happening, that tragedy is happening. We have become blind followers of the Western values, social, political, cultural, and economic paradigms. That is why there is degeneration in national life, in the strength and robustness of our national mainstream, and immunity has been damaged. You will have no more life in you. When Indians begin to imitate West, India will die. Indians won't have life force in them. Just having a body working as the cogs in the wheels of the industrial civilization is not the life. Life has tremendous meaning. We will lose the heart and soul of our life if we become blind followers of the West. Essentially, this is based on a very fundamental tenet of existence that Lord Krishna has given in Bhagavad Gita. Strayang swadharmo vigunaha paradharmo bhayavaha. Strayang swadharmo vigunaha paradharmo bhayavaha. Your own religion here means your own nature. Your own nature. You must follow your own nature, your innate nature, even if there are defects in that, because following others' nature, others' path is disastrous, even if it looks so promising. That is what the modern India is doing. The dazzle and material glamour of West has mesmerized us, and we are committing cultural, spiritual suicide in a very significant sense. That is what Swami Vivekananda was. In the second place, it is impossible. The stream is taking its rise away beyond where time began, flowing through millions of ages of human history. Do you mean to get hold of that stream and push it back to its source, to a Himalayan glacier? Even if that were practicable, it would not be possible for you to be Europeanized. If you find it is impossible for the European to throw off the few centuries of culture which there is in the West, do you think it is possible for you to throw off the culture of shining scores of centuries? It cannot be. We must also remember that in every little village gods and every little superstitious custom is that which we are accustomed to call our religious faith. But local customs are infinite and contradictory. Which are we to obey and which not to obey? The Brahmin of southern India, for instance, there are various practices even today that southern Brahmins of southern India would not like to do what northern Indians do, and what northern Indian Brahmins or upper caste or even all the castes do, and they think that is a part of their religion, unchangeable. The southern people, so it varies from state to state. There is so much of diversity in these traditions, local paradigms based on their own evolution, time and climb across the Indian subcontinent. But beyond this, there is a still greater difficulty. There are two sorts of truth we find in our Shastras. One that is based upon the eternal nature of man, the one that deals with the eternal relation of God, soul and nature. The other with local circumstances, environments of the time, social institutions of the period and so forth. The first class of truths is chiefly embodied in our Vedas. The first class of truths, that is eternal truths, universal truths, are contained and based on Vedas. Our scriptures, Vedas, which are our scriptures, the second in the Smritis, the Puranas, etc. We must remember that for all periods, the Vedas are the final goal and authority, and if the Puranas differ in any respect from the Vedas, that part of the Puranas is to be rejected without mercy. The Vedas must prevail over Puranas and Smriti, that is, Shruti must prevail over Smriti wherever and whenever there is a conflict. That's a very fundamental thing to bear in mind for every Indian, every Hindu, every Sanatana Dharmi. We find then that in all these Smritis, the teachings are different. One Smriti says, this is the custom and this should be the practice of this age. Another one says, this is the practice of this age, and so forth. This is the achara which should be custom of the Satya Yuga, and this is the achara which should be custom of Kali Yuga, and so forth. Now this is one of the most glorious doctrines, that you have that eternal truths, being based upon the nature of man, will never change so long as man lives. They are for all times omnipresent universal virtues. But the Smritis speak generally of local circumstances, of duties arising from different environments, and they change in the course of time. This you have always to remember, that because a little social custom is going to be changed, you are not going to lose your religion. Not at all. Remember, these customs have already been changed. There was a time in this very India Again, Swamiji refers to various practices which in some part of India they are part and parcel of our cultural life, food system, but in other parts of the country the people feel abhorrent towards them. So they are local practices, they are not the heart and soul of Vedas, which are eternal, universal values upon which this Hindu or Sanatan Dharma is based upon. In course of time, other laws have to be made and old laws must be changed. That happens even in the modern times in the constitutions. The constitution, our Indian constitution of the Republic has undergone so much of change because the changing times, the dynamic demand of the time and climb warrants certain changes, and that must happen. We should not be so rigid towards them. That is what Swamiji is suggesting. These inter will have to go and other smritis will come. This is one fact we have to learn, that the Vedas being eternal will be one and the same throughout all ages. But the smritis will have an end. As time rolls on, more and more of the smritis will go. Sages will come and they will change and direct society into better channels, into duties and into paths which accord with the necessity of the age, and without which it is impossible that society can live. Thus we have to guide our course, avoiding these two dangers, and I hope that every one of us here will have breadth enough and at the same time faith enough to understand what that means, which I suppose is the inclusion of everything and not the exclusion. I want the intensity of the fanatic plus the extensity of the materialist. Deep as the ocean, broad as the infinite skies, that is the sort of heart we want. Let us be as progressive as any nation that ever existed, and at the same time as faithful and conservative towards our traditions as Hindus alone know how to be. In plain words, we have first to learn the distinction between the essentials and the non-essentials in everything. Essentials are eternal, universal, unchangeable, immutable. The essentials which are part of any religion need not be and must not be changed in time and clime. But there are non-essentials also depending on time and clime. So Swami Vivekananda is talking about what to do with the essentials and what to do with the non-essentials which are part of our religion and cultural life. The essentials are eternal, the non-essentials have value only for a certain period of time. And if after a time they are not replaced by something essential, they are positively dangerous. I do not mean that you should stand up and revile all your old customs and institutions. Certainly not. You must not revile even the most evil of them. Revile none whatsoever, whosoever. Even those customs that are now appearing to be positive evils have been positively life-giving in past time of our nation, and if we have to remove these, we must not do so with curses, but with blessings and gratitude for the glorious work these customs have done for the preservation of our race. Even those practices and customs we have discarded had certain role at certain point of time, and they have helped in preservation of our race, the Sanatan Dharma, the Vedic culture, the Hinduism. So we should not despise and revile any of our ancient customs and practices. And we must also remember that the leaders of our societies have never been either generals or kings, but rishis. Remember, every Indian should remember this. We must also remember that the leaders of our societies have never been either generals, military generals, or kings, but rishis, manishis, maharshis. And who are the rishis? The rishi, as he is called in the Upanishads, is not an ordinary man, but a mantra drashta. He is a mind who sees religion, to whom religion is not merely book learning, not argumentation, nor speculation, nor much talking, but actual realization. Actual realization is the mantra. Actual realization is the firm foundation that a rishi walks on, lives on, works for. But actual realization, a coming face to face with truths which transcend the senses, aparokshanubhuti, direct, immediate experience of transcendent truth, God realization, self-realization, and realization of the ultimate reality of the existence. That was the sole objective and the scientific, super scientific paradigm our rishis were following, and that's why they discovered the eternal, immortal truths about existence, about mind, about nature, about God, about the supreme divinity, about Brahman. These are eternal truths, not changeable with time and clime. This is rishihood, and that rishihood does not belong to any age or time or even to sects or castes. Vatsyayan says, truth must be realized, and we have to remember that you and I and every one of us will be called upon to become rishis. Every Indian, every Hindu's, the most noble obligation, objective is to become a rishi. The moksha, which is param purushartha's ultimate objective, that is attainable, and that is the goal of the rishis, and that becomes possible only for the rishi, the seer of the truth, truth transcendent, truth eternal, reality transcendent, reality universal is what a sage, a rishi works on and realizes that supreme reality. We have to remember that you and I, every one of us, will be called upon to become rishis, and we must have faith in ourselves. We must become world movers, for everything is in us. Every Indian must become the world mover, because everything means the divinity within, the self within, the Atman within is infinite, eternal, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent reality. We are Brahman. The Jiva is Shiva, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. This was the supreme teaching and discovery of the Rishis of India. That is the sole objective of this race, the Hindus, the Sanatan Dharmis, and each one of us is called upon to realize that supreme eternity, that eternal power, the omnipotence is our nature, omniscience, omnipresence and omnipotence is intrinsic and inherent in every Indian, in every Hindu. You must realize this. This is the sole objective of Vedanta, and that is the practical Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda. Right now, right here, that supreme confidence must become part and parcel of our daily life. Life giving, reinvigorating, the confidence, full of confidence, regenerating, reinvigorating our life. Those values must become part and parcel of our daily life. We must see religion face to face, experience it, and thus solve our doubts about it. And then, standing up in the glorious light of Rishihood, each one of us will be a giant, and every word falling from our lips will carry behind it that infinite sanction of security, and before us evil will vanish by itself, without the necessity of cursing anyone, without the necessity of abusing anyone, without the necessity of fighting anyone in the world. May the Lord help us, each one of us here, to realize the Rishihood for our own salvation and for that of others. Atmano mokshārtham jagat hitaya cha. That is the motto of an average Hindu, a Sanatan Dharmi. Atmano mokshārtham jagat hitaya cha. The realization of this supreme immortal truth within us, that divinity within must be manifested, and only after manifestation and realization of our divine nature we truly become capable of doing something for others. The rest is hypocrisy, the political charity or economic charity we must do, but the real charity, the real power to do the great yajna for Lok Kalyan, what Lord Krishna talks about in entire Bhagavad Gita. The one who is self-realized is the greatest lover, the greatest donor, the greatest benefactor of the world material too. Even the economic, cultural, social life has tremendous positive impact when there are self-realized masters, there are enlightened human souls who shine their light, they shower their love, bliss and beauty on each one of you. Let me hope and pray that we realize our true nature, the essence of our Rishihood. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormayamritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.